So, teach English in the heart of Latin America, Colombia. This is a country that I know incredibly well. I'm absolutely in love with, and I'm going to be sharing some information with you today. But first off, for those of you that don't know me, as I said, some of you may have attended some of our other webinars before, but for those of you that don't know, my name's Tom, head TEFL coach at Precision TEFL. I'm from the UK. But I've been living and teaching English in South America since January 2018. I have spent the vast majority of my time teaching in Colombia. However, I have spent a little bit of time as well teaching in Peru, which I did during my first year. But most of the time here in this very incredible, fantastic country that I hope to be able to make you all, enthusiasts about once we're done here. I've been to 22 of the 32 departamentos in Colombia. Now, the way to think about Colombia is it's not broken up into states or into counties. It's broken up into something called departamentos. And I have been to, yes, 22 of the 32 different places, such as the Caribbean coast, Pacific coast, the Amazon jungle. I've been high up mountains, in deserts, in the coffee region, canyons, capital cities, and other different parts of the country. And that enables me to give you a really kind of good understanding in terms of what's out there. And I haven't just been to these places, just for like an afternoon as a backpacker. I've actually lived and worked in a number of them, and spent actually extended periods in a number of other ones as well. Thanks to the fact that as an English teacher, I've been able to do a great deal of online teaching, meaning that I can move around from place to place, really get a feel for the different places in Colombia, and that helps me give you a nice comprehensive overview of what is in this wonderful country. Quickly to give you an idea about the company that I work for, as I said, I'm the head TEFL coach at Precision TEFL. We are an accredited TEFL course provider. That's to say that we help people just like you become qualified English teachers with a teaching English as a foreign language qualification. We consider ourselves to be education experts because I have over 8 years of experience in the TEFL field, but other members of the team have worked in UK primary schools, also other members working as special needs teachers in UK schools, and the director spent a few decades working for the Ministry of Defence, specifically focusing on training and course design. So all of that talent, skills and experience has been put together, and that is what we have here with Precision TEFL. And we consider ourselves to be, the experts, or we consider Colombia to be our specialist subject based on the fact that I have spent so much time living and working in this part of the world. But Colombia isn't the only thing we deal with in terms of the TEFL space. As I said, we do a number of different webinars, and we have helped people from all around the world certify as English teachers and find jobs all around the world, places like Spain, Australia, China. Colombia is just one of many places that we help TEFL teachers find jobs. But as I said, based on the fact that I've been here for so long, it's where we kind of are able to offer that extra bit of specialist knowledge and experience. Okay, just to give you a bit of my background and my story and what's brought me here to be speaking with you today. So, before coming over to Colombia, I was living in London and working in the music industry. I was working as a label manager at a top flight drum and bass record label called Hospital Records, for any of you that like your dance music. It was a fantastic job, but I really wanted to do something different with my life as I was getting towards the ripe old age of 30 years of age, and I didn't really see myself going to raves and festivals for much longer. So I wanted to transition into something that I thought would be a bit more sustainable and give me the chance to kind of grow and develop as a person. Discovered TEFL, quit my job, or sorry, got certified, crucially, quit my job, and then came over to Colombia. And since then, I've worked in private and public schools. I have done lots of private tutoring, one-to-one, and I now have my own private tutoring company here in Colombia, which I run alongside my role as head TEFL coach at Precision TEFL. During the last 8+ years, I have gone on to get married. My wife is Colombian. We've recently bought an apartment here in Ibagué in Colombia, and I now consider myself to be bilingual thanks to having spent so much time in a Spanish-speaking country. Okay, so we asked a few questions in the sign up process for this webinar. And it's interesting. There definitely is a bit of knowledge out there in terms of Colombia, the key things to know about this country, but I really want to try to dig a little bit deeper because, of course, when it comes to a country so far away from places like the UK, Canada, Ireland, even the United States, which is a little bit closer, but still a fair way away, there's only so much you can really know about this place before visiting. So I hope to kind of shine the light on this country a little bit now. First thing to note is that Colombia is the second most biodiverse country in the world. What does this mean? Within one single country, you are able to go all the way up to snow-capped mountains, down to deserts, tropical rainforests, crystal beautiful beaches, coffee regions, savannas, all of that is in one country. So you have amazing plants, tropical birds, fruit, vegetables, topography, geography that really just you cannot find in other countries. So being here just gives you that ability to experience so many of the incredible different features of the planet, and it's all kind of condensed and put into one country. And the other interesting thing to note about Colombia is that every departamento, as I said, you should think about departamentos as states or counties. Every departamento has its own history, its own culture, its own way of doing things. So that means if you travel around Colombia, it feels like you're traveling to different countries. You are still within the boundaries and the borders of Colombia. But if you move from one departamento to another, you will see that people physically change. You will see that their dress and their clothes change, the way they talk changes, the food that they eat changes, and the way that they dance and the music that they listen to changes. So moving around this country is an absolutely fascinating experience. And what it really is the best things about being a teacher here, because during your time off, you don't just get to explore kind of the local area and then kind of get a sense of what the country's like and just stick to that, because you know that further afield, there are things that you can check out. And that is a really hard thing to convey. Like I know that, having spent a great period of time living in the UK, that the difference between Plymouth and Leeds, yes, the accent's different, and you may find slight differences in the way that people behave, but generally things look the same, people act the same way, people are into the same things and have the same kind of cultural references that they integrate into their day-to-day lives. That is not the case in Colombia. You need to think of this country as one massive country with a set of shared values broken up into individual jigsaw pieces that represent really unique cultural features, and all of them are out there to enjoy. Another great thing about Colombia is that you can experience multiple climates in one day. Again, if you're from the UK or from Ireland or Canada, you're going to be used to seasons where summer comes and goes, winter sets in, spring and autumn. That's not the case here in Colombia. Because it is so close to the equator, we have dry and wet seasons, but that doesn't mean that you're locked into one temperature. No, because of the different geography of this amazing country, you are able to move from into hotter areas, into colder areas, and vice versa, because you simply just go up or down the mountain. For example, the capital city, Bogota, is 2,600 meters above sea level, pretty high up when you compare that to places in the UK. And that means that Bogota is at more or less 19 degrees centigrade all year round. The city that I live in, just 3 hours away from Bogota, is 29 degrees all year round. And to get here, you have to pass through a canyon where temperatures go up to 34, 35 degrees. That's just one small sliver of the country, but it gives you an idea of what's out there. Moving around Colombia means passing through different cultures. It also means passing through different climates, which means if on the weekend you fancy a bit of extra heat, where you know that there are plenty of places that you can head to. In my case, where I actually spend most of my time living in one never-ending summer, sometimes I feel the need for some fresh air, something slightly cooler, and I just pick a spot that's nearby, head up the mountain and spend a few hours or maybe even a few nights there and just kind of enjoy different climates. But crucially, it's there for you to pick and choose. You don't have to wait for the seasons to come and go. Another great thing about Colombia is that it is still one of those underrated places. Unfortunately, and I don't really want to get too stuck into the negative stereotypes associated with Colombia, but it's still one of those places that people tend to stay away from. But that is changing because more and more people come here and more people realize that the horrible stereotypes aren't really the reality of day-to-day life in this country, and that most of the things or most of the people you may have heard of existed long ago in the past. And in fact, actually is a very, very enjoyable, safe, and just generally great place to travel. And as a result, tourism is growing here in Colombia. I think it was last year, Colombia celebrated receiving 7 million tourists, which for a country of this size and given its history is a big deal. But if you compare it to places like Brazil or Mexico or Argentina, it is still quite far behind. So it's one of those great places where you feel like it's flourishing. You don't feel like it's saturated by tourism. Yes, there are expats. Yes, there are backpackers. But crucially, you're not in a place that's completely swamped by tourists. I can see an emoji has gone up there, a hand. If that is to do with a question, please write your question in the chat. I will come to this, as I said, once I'm done with the presentation. If it's something to do with my mic or something to do with the presentation itself, I need all of you, please, to bombard me with emojis. But if I just see that one there, I'm going to assume that that is question related. And I just encourage you, please, to write your question in the chat. And I promise I will answer it. Finally, one of the other things that I would say about Colombia is that it is a very affordable place to travel and the cost of living is very low. To give you an example of that, before buying the apartment that my wife are living in now, we were living in an apartment on the other side of the city, 3 bedrooms, a big spacious living room, balconies overlooking a park. We even had hummingbirds come to our balcony on most days, and we were paying just over £200 a month, which if you compare that to rental prices in places like the UK, Ireland, Canada, the US, well, there's absolutely no comparison. So this part of the world is still very much considered a low cost of living um, country or region if you compare it to places like Europe and North America. Okay, things you need to know about Colombia. Now, there is always a danger here of kind of pigeonholing or stereotyping people. And I really want to avoid this kind of warm locals or friendly locals expression, which, you find that in the lonely travel books or when people do, tourist guide videos for the BBC. They always talk about the friendly locals. I think that's quite patronizing. So I want to avoid that as much as possible here. And I want to tell you about some things that I've picked up on, during the last few years or the last 8 years that I have spent living in Colombia, and I actually feel quite confident talking about these different things. So the first things that you need to know about Colombians is that they absolutely love music. Music is absolutely massive here, and as I said, each departamento or state, as you should think about it, has its own type of music and its own regional local dance, which means as you move around this country, you will hear a plethora of different sounds and you will also see a very different style of dancing and engaging with that music. And one of the things that absolutely fascinates me about Colombia is if you think about how many tracks, how many songs do you confidently know all of the words to? Half a dozen, maybe a few more if you've got a particular band that you love. I swear here in Colombia, Colombians know more or less every word to every song. It's so common to find Colombians singing in public spaces, in restaurants, driving taxis, whatever kind of situation, singing along to songs. And it always amazes me just how well people in this country know their music. The same goes for dancing. You'll see people that from a distance look like they have absolutely no right to being on the dance floor, suddenly bust out the best moves, moving seamlessly from one dance style to another dance style to another dance style. And all of this is because Colombians are incredibly proud of their country and incredibly proud of their culture, both local and national. And that means that the music and the dance um, patterns or steps are taught to young kids at a young age, which means that their local culture and national culture is preserved and passed on from generation to generation. Something similar here when it comes to food. Colombians are very, very passionate about food. You will not find Colombians skipping lunch like we do in the UK, grabbing a quick meal deal to go back to your desk and just kind of chomp it down so you can get on with what you're doing. No, people here stop for lunch. They have a big breakfast, and generally meals are shared with friends and family members or co-workers. It's not something that you do in a rush on your own. It is an actual part of the day. And for that reason, people really appreciate the food. Another thing to understand is thanks to being the second most biodiverse country in the world, is that so much of the food that we import, talking from the point of view of countries like the UK, is grown and found here in Colombia. So fresh produce is on the plates of Colombians, which means that food is absolutely delicious over here. And Colombians, again, have taken a lot of effort to preserve and to put a lot of love into recipes that are passed down from generation to generation. So going out for something to eat here in Colombia is generally an really epic experience. I loved food before I came over to this part of the world, but I'm absolutely now infatuated with food, thanks to having enjoyed everything from incredible fruit to wonderful seafood dishes and everything in between. Not even, having to mention coffee, just how great that is over here. So if you decide to come over to this part of the world, that is the kind of thing that is waiting for you. Other things to know about Colombians, that they are early birds. And what I mean by that is if you look at the statistics, there's only one country in the world, I think, where people get up earlier on average than Colombia. In this part of the world, people like getting up early. It's also very closely linked to the job market and the fact that people tend to start work very, very early. Kids actually tend to go to school a lot earlier when compared to countries like the UK or Ireland. And as a result, most Colombians kind of have that chip now inserted, and they get up early with a real spring in their step. And that carries across into the weekend as well. If you make plans with Colombians, there's none of this, oh, I'll see you at 11. No, no, no. People are getting up nice and early to make the very best of their time off. And that adds a real kind of interesting buzz and kind of energy to the places. When I go back to the UK now, I see my friends and family. One of the things that hits me more than anything is just how late, compared to what I'm used to over here, people get up in the UK. Colombians tend to live for the moment. You'll find a lot of kind of emphasis on really making the very best of what's going on right now. Some of that's links to the reality of it being a developing country and, some difficult conditions, but also it's just kind of a general philosophy that Colombians tend to embrace. They really want to make the best of this moment. So getting together with Colombians, you tend to find a lot of warmth and energy and humor and just the desire to make the best of that particular shared moment. Now, again, I know that these sound like very broad brush stereotypes, but these are things I'm very confident in saying, having spent so much time here. And final point, a strong emphasis on being hospitable. Colombians all across the country, in all of the different departamentos or states that I have visited, one of the really shared features is just how welcoming people are when it comes to inviting you into their home, offering you a coffee, and really making you feel welcome and wanting to feel good about the place that they live in. One of the things that I'm really struck by here in Colombia is that Colombians are very patriotic, but it's not a patriotism that excludes other people. They are desperate to include other people. That's to say, they want visitors to their country to feel just as great and enthusiastic as they do about their own country, which again, I think leads to a very interesting and very tangible and enjoyable energy when you are in this country. Just a few more slides to go here. Please do remember that there's a Q&A coming up, so write your questions in the chat. Happy to answer all of those all of those questions. Moving on to teaching in Colombia. So as I mentioned, I've worked in public and private schools, language institutes, private tutoring, a whole range of different places. And the one thing you should know about Colombia right now is that there's an absolutely enormous demand for English teachers. For whatever reason, due to some, let's say, neglect from previous governments, Colombia fell quite far behind the international league table in terms of English as a second language. Recent governments have done a lot to try and reverse that, meaning that there is a huge emphasis on people over here learning English, and you won't just find that at the school or play school level. It's something that stretches through all of society, and you will find people eager to learn English, whether they're business professionals, dancers, football players, teenagers, young kids, taxi drivers, whatever. Everyone at the moment is really, really eager to learn English. So that means there are absolutely tons of opportunities out there. Plus, due to the reputation of Colombia, which is very, unfortunate given the reality here in the country, there aren't so many teachers from the countries like the UK, Ireland, US, Canada, meaning that there is a real desire to invite and accept applications from what are known as native speakers in this part of the world. So finding a job as a qualified English teacher is very, very easy. In fact, I have regularly and continue to do so. I regularly have to turn down work in this country because simply I cannot say yes to everything. But for people thinking about coming over to Colombia but concerned about whether or not they'd be able to find a job, I would say that is probably one of the least of your concerns, just simply due to the huge demand there is here for English teachers. I would also say about Colombia is that it's very flexible when compared to some other teaching destinations. Now, I've spent, as I said, the bulk of my time, if not all of my time, teaching in South America, but I have worked with a number of different teachers that have taught in places like South Korea, Japan, China, Thailand, and lots of other different countries. And then they came over to do a spot of teaching in Colombia. And the thing that they always reported was just how much more flexible things are in Colombia. That's to say, and it's kind of reflected in the day-to-day attitudes of your average Colombian. Think people don't get so uptight about some of the smaller details, meaning that it is actually quite an enjoyable place to work. You don't tend to have your boss looking over you all the time, paying, exceptionally close attention to every detail in everything that you do, which means for a first-time teacher that may be concerned about making mistakes or not getting things right immediately, it is actually quite a good place to work. And as I said, the number of different people that I've spoken with that have then taught in this part of the world have said just how refreshing it is to be able to actually get on with their job and not be bogged down by admin, which can be a feature of a lot of other TEFL destinations. Okay, popular destinations in Colombia. Now, there's going to be a lot of names on here you probably don't recognize, maybe some that you do. But I'm just going to quickly just whip through them and describe them more so that you can just get a feel for the diversity of this country and really get an understanding of what's out there if you are interested in teaching English in this part of the world. Bogota, the capital city, 10 million people. It's both the best and the worst of humanity. It's chaotic, but it's also full of art and culture. 2,600 meters above sea level, meaning that it enjoys kind of early spring like climate, the best concerts, the best art exhibitions, and generally this is where the kind of the forefront of development is taking place in this country. I spend a lot of time in Bogota. My wife is from Bogota, and it is an absolutely wonderful city to get to know. And it will probably be the first on your list if you decide to come over to this part of the world, simply because that's where most of the international flights lead to. Moving on to Medellin, a place that a lot of people argue could be the capital city of Colombia. Completely different climate. This is where we're into early summer, if we think in terms of the UK, about 24, 25 degrees. A much smaller city, but much more modern. A lot of money was pumped into Medellin during the last few decades, meaning that it has a very, very good public transport system, amazing music scene. It's a very, very popular destination for digital nomads and first-time travelers to the country. Medellin is the place that is associated with Pablo Escobar, the very, very famous drug baron that died in the early 90s. Again, that's not something that we want to celebrate or we want to spend too much time thinking about in the context of Colombia, but it is part of its history, and this is the city that was famously linked to him. So if that history does interest you, that is a part of the country which you would definitely be interested in checking out. But obviously done so respectfully. It's not about, as I say, celebrating that type of person. It's just more about recognizing their role in the history of the country and accepting it for what it is, whilst then comparing Medellin from the past to Medellin in the present and seeing what an amazing development has taken place in that city. Cali in the west of the country towards the Pacific coast. This is the salsa capital of Colombia. A really fantastic place, another one of the key cities in Colombia, and a place where salsa is alive and kicking. You will find salsa bars all throughout the city. People dance on an absolutely next level here. I dare not step on a dance floor in Cali because that is where, even though I've tried my very best to learn salsa moves over here, I am definitely far behind everyone else. Ibagué, a part of the country that I know exceptionally well. I've lived here for a number of years. This is where we have the height of UK summer all year round. It's a small city, 500,000 people. It is the musical capital of Colombia, meaning that music and dance is incredibly well integrated. It's part of the fabric of the community here. It's a small city surrounded by mountains and tropical birds, rainforests, and just a generally beautiful place to be. Barranquilla up on the Caribbean coast. This is where Shakira, the incredibly famous pop singer, is from. This is where temperatures again sit all year round around 36, 37 degrees. Very modern city, lots of investment, and generally a very popular place for people to work and visit. Bucaramanga, down on the left-hand side, this is where canyons, if you're a fan of canyons and rocks and mountains, this is definitely the place for you to check out. There is a particular place called the Canyon de Chicamocha. Again, wonderful summer temperatures and one of the most epic things I've ever seen in my life, that canyon. It's hard for your brain to take in everything that you're seeing. And again, just one of those incredible places that you are able to visit. Regular flights from places like Bogota and Medellin and Cali, very well interconnected and a very fantastic place to visit. Santa Marta, up on the Caribbean coast. This is where you're going to find lush, fantastic, beautiful Caribbean beaches, warm Caribbean sea, amazing seafood, and again, a totally different history when compared to other parts of the country because this is where the Spanish and the slave owners. In Colombia's history, had a big presence. So people look very different. The history of that part of the country is very different when compared to some of the places in the center of the country. So just traveling 1 hour on a plane from Bogota to Santa Marta, you go up about 15 degrees in temperature, see completely different people, eat completely different food, and experience an entirely different culture. Tunja right up in the mountains. Now we're going down up in the mountains, but down in temperature. Temperatures of around 12 to 13 degrees. Colombia isn't just tropical heat everywhere, as you're probably getting a feel for now. It fluctuates, and the higher you go up in the mountains, that is what you're going to find in Tunja. Very beautiful, quaint little city, a place that I worked in for 6 months, and again, a very popular place for people to head off and visit. Final two places, Manizales and Armenia. Manizales is a wonderful city in the coffee region, which happens to be next to a national park surrounded by not just one, but three volcanoes. And that happens to share the same region as Armenia there, bottom right. Again, part of the coffee region. Lovely daytime temperatures around 23 degrees, student cities, lots of energy and people out and about in those cities. And again, making it a very interesting place to visit. So if we zoom out here and look at these different places, even though if you haven't heard of them before, you're probably starting to get an idea of just how diverse and interesting this country is. And the great news for English teachers is that you are able to find a job here very easily. You're able to pick and choose the type of place that you would like to live in. For example, if you're not that big a fan of the beach, but you love mountains, well, you can head to a place like Bucaramanga or Ibagué. Or if you're not that fan of the heat and you prefer quaint little places, a place like Tunja could be good for you. Whatever it is that you want in terms of your ideal spot, your ideal climate, your ideal temperature, your ideal city size, you will find teaching jobs in all of these locations. That brings me on to share with you something about our teaching English program in Colombia. We understand that Colombia, even though I did it myself, uh, moving on to the other side of the world and getting set up in a country that you may not know a lot about could be quite daunting, which is why we have this very specific program. That's where we guide you through the entire process of getting qualified, securing a job, and relocating. As part of the program, you get a full 120-hour accredited TEFL certificate, job placement support to ensure that you have a job before you even think about booking flights. The visa is handled entirely for you. That includes everything like getting the documents together and the translations. All of that is taken off you and handled by us. And then Once you get over to Colombia, we'll pick you up at the airport, show you around for a couple of days, put you up in a hotel, make sure that you're feeling welcome and you're feeling settled in and set up. And then you will head off to your teaching destination. But that's not where it ends in terms of contact with us. You will have ongoing local support from me, a British TEFL coach based in this country. Just to give you an overview of how all of that work, it is broken up into three phases. As I said, the first part is taking an accredited TEFL course. This TEFL certificate is not just valid in Colombia. The great news is that once you are TEFL qualified, you are able to go and teach English, not just in Colombia, but in many, many different countries around the world. And that is something that should you, let's say, get cold feet about the idea of teaching in Colombia, that's something we would definitely then be able to help you with. As I mentioned before, we work with teachers or trainee teachers from all around the world, and we help them find teaching jobs on every continent. But let's say you do fancy sticking with Colombia. As I said, once you have finished your TEFL course, we would then get you sorted with a job in the place that you want to work, the type of place you'd want to work in, the type of student that you want to teach. And then we handle everything from visas to making sure that you go through the recruitment process without any bumps or issues. And then it's time to see you in Colombia. As I said, we pick you up at the airport and show you the very best of the city that you arrive in for a couple of days. Final questions before we wrap up here. A couple of questions that you should probably ask yourself. Do you want to work in a country where you can explore places like jungles, mountain, Caribbean beaches, coffee regions, colonial towns and cities? Because if that is the case, Colombia could be a really great option for you. Do you want a job that is meaningful, where you make a real impact in people's lives? Here in Colombia, people are so eager to learn English. They want to study with people from countries like the UK, US, Ireland, Canada, Australia, because it gives them contact with countries that they aspire to either live in one day, or that they hope one day Colombia will be more like, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the economy, in terms of many of the different great features that you find in developed countries like the UK. People are generally very enthusiastic about learning English, and you really can help them by being here. I've worked with students living in rural towns here in Colombia that have gone on to study master's degrees in places like the UK and Canada. That is just by you getting up in the morning and going and doing your job as a teacher. You can help people make a real significant changes in their life, and that is effectively putting good vibes into the universe. There is nothing else quite like it. And low cost of living, do you want to earn enough money to live well and travel in Colombia? As I said, Colombia is, especially when compared to Europe and North America, a low cost of living country. It's very well connected. Hotels and internal travel are considerably cheaper, even when we look at relative costs and compared to what people are paid and what they're able to do with their salaries. It's a great place to visit. You're not going to spend a ton of cash like if you are in places like Thailand, where costs keep spiraling. In Colombia, thanks to the fact that it is in its infancy in many ways, thanks to the developing tourism industry over here, it is a great time to visit and live and work in this country. Time to move on to the Q&A now. Just to give you an idea that if you want to find out more about our Teach English in Colombia program, you can reach me at contact@precisiontefl.com. It is not something that you will find on our website of a click here to buy button or sign up here. You have to apply to take part in this course, because we have limited placements, and that's not just some sales mechanism that you hear on all of the different TikTok videos that are out there. We actually do heavily limit the number of people that we take on each year, because we put a lot of love and energy into this process. We make sure that we find you a job in the right place. We are handling all of the visas for you, and we are picking you up at the airport and spending time with you. That is not something we can do for hundreds and hundreds of people, which is why we ensure people apply to make sure that they are the right fit. They are serious about doing it, and that way we can be sure we're going to give you the absolute top rate service that you deserve if you decide to participate in this program. So, time to move on to the Q&A. Time for you to ask me anything. Hopefully there's some questions in the chat. If not, please put them in there now, and I will get to this. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. Okay, so first question from Zoe, can I become certified while working a full-time job, i.e. after work classes? Yes, Zoe, absolutely, you can. The way that our course is set up is that it is fully self-paced and 100% online, and there's no minimum or maximum number of hours that you're expected to put in per week. That's to say, if you're only able to log in after work and put in a couple of hours each day or just a few times a week, that's absolutely great. You can steadily move through the course and then you will get your qualification. And as I said, that qualification isn't just valid in Colombia. That is something that you can use to teach English all around the world, including online. If you decide that you want to go down the avenue of teaching English in Colombia, that's something you would potentially want to do via our program. Or if you're just interested in the TEFL qualification, again, that's something we can help you with and then point you in the direction and guide you to finding jobs in different parts of the world. But yes, we have people studying with us that are studying their masters, working full time, have kids, and they just put in the hours that they can in their free time. Some people put in 8 hours a day, some people put in 8 hours a week, and that just enables you to work through the course at your pace. But crucially, we will not be on your back telling you that you need to complete it within a certain amount of time, nor will we be following you up or chasing you up to let you know of a looming deadline. It doesn't work that way. Once you're signed up with us, you then do it, in a way that fits around your life. Thank you for that question, Zoe. Next one from Summers. I'm not sure if Summers is your surname, just because of the way it's written here. CM Summers. Apologies if I'm getting that mixed up here. When you first joined the company, did you have to find your own accommodation or did they provide or help you get one? Excellent, excellent question. So, and this is a big part of the program of why things are set up the way they are. When I came over to Colombia, I did it entirely on my own. That's to say, I was TEFL qualified. I came to Colombia and then I started applying for jobs. I went through the visa process. I had to find a place to live. I did absolutely all of that on my own. And as a result, there were things that I did well and there were things that I didn't do so well. There were things that I could have spotted but were completely unaware of. There were places that I worked that weren't really for me. There were parts of the country that maybe I'd have preferred to have been in a different place. It was a natural learning path. I don't regret any of it, but we want to help people kind of save time and avoid all of that. That's why anyone that applies for our Teach English in Colombia program, the first thing that we're going to do once we make sure that you are the right fit, let's say, for that program, is we're going to get a very, very clear idea of the type of student you want to teach. For example, if you really can't stand the idea of working with teenagers or kids, the last thing we're going to do is try and find you a job in a school. We're going to look towards a language institute where you'll work typically with adults. Or if you can't stand the idea of working with adults, but you're totally inspired by working with young kids, we will then find you a job in a school with children of that age. But that's something that we handle. You're not expected to find those jobs. We have connections and partnerships with schools all over this country. I'm very familiar with the job market here, where to look, who to speak with, and what constitutes a good offer, a bad offer, all of that. So that's something that we take off you. Secondly, we would ask you what type of place you fancy living in. For example, if you hate big cities, the last thing we're going to do is try and find you a job in Bogota because it's a massive city of 10 million people. Similarly, if you can't stand cold weather or you really don't like the beach or you really don't like mosquitoes or whatever it may be, we will get that information out of you. We'll try and find what your ideal place looks like, and then we will find you a job in that city or town. The beauty of Colombia is you are able to pick your ideal temperature, the type of plants you want around you. Do you want access to the sea or do you prefer rivers? Do you want mountains? Do you want savannas? What type of thing do you want? We will then, as I said, make sure that we apply for jobs, the type of student you want to teach, the type of place you would want to work in, and then crucially, we handle that recruitment process. The beauty of this is that I speak fluent Spanish. My wife is Colombian. She also works for the company. So we are able to handle that recruitment process for you. And really, it's just a case of turning up for the job interview. And that's really it. Moving on to the visa. That's something again that we would handle for you, including making sure that we get the translations done inside Colombia so they are always accepted because they need a particular stamp and seal of approval. When it comes to accommodation, that is the question you asked, and it just kind of ties into all of this. That is something we would then support you with. Depending on the school that you work for, some schools may have like a member of staff that's there to help new arrivals. Others don't, and they expect you to do it yourself. If that is the case, we will absolutely step in and accompany you and make sure that you are set up in the place that you are working in. The beauty of having me in Colombia is the fact that providing um, you know, I know what's coming, and in this case, because we're managing the program, I would be able to, if necessary, go to that city and help you, or manage things from distance, depending on what's needed. But you will not be expected to just turn up in a random city in Colombia and then go and find an apartment. That would be irresponsible, and that is a fundamental part of the program. We're basically trying to eliminate all of the stress and pain points and uncertainties, so that you can just get yourself TEFL qualified, come over and enjoy this country and enjoy teaching. We don't want you to be burdened with the things like finding a place to live, visas, how do I find a job? Because we know what happens. 90% of people will just back off, and then they won't actually ever get to come over here and they won't get to experience it. So that is where we come in. We want to help you get the best out of this country. Question from Zoe again. Thank you, Zoe. Once you are certified, is there a time period in which you need to start teaching for it to stay active? No. A TEFL qualification is valid for life. There's no top-ups. There's no need to renew it. Once you have um, taken that course and you get your certificate, you can start applying for jobs straight away, or you can leave it a while. In my case, I got TEFL qualified and I waited 7 months after receiving my certificate before even applying for a job. I know people that dip in and out of teaching. They use it, or TEFL teaching specifically, they use it as a way to kind of have interesting sabbaticals or career breaks or transitions between studying and working or whatever it may be. That's the beauty of this TEFL qualification. I know we're here talking specifically about teaching in Colombia, but just look at it from just TEFL in general. TEFL is one of the best qualifications you can have, because once you've got it, you can use it all around the world and it's valid until the end of your days. So whether you're 25, 35, 55, or even above, that's something that you can use to enjoy visiting different countries, hopefully in the context of this webinar, Colombia. Another question, what website did you use to apply? So I guess you're talking about applying for jobs within Colombia. There are a number of different places. It wouldn't really be worthwhile me telling you what I used in 2018. What I can tell you now is that a lot of jobs are advertised on LinkedIn. There are also websites, which won't necessarily mean anything to you in this moment, called CompuTrabajo. But they're just one of many. But again, that's not something that you would have to worry about. If you decided to come over here and you wanted to take part in our program, we would handle the job finding process. You would just be given some offers, some opportunities for interviews, and you say yes to the one that you like. You wouldn't have to be trawling through job offers. That's very much included in the program. Another question from Lowry. What was your Spanish level before moving to South America? What are the qualifications and experience required? And did you have any teaching experience for TEFL in South America? 3 amazing questions. Well done, Lowry. Gold star for you. Let me do them one by one. What was my Spanish level like before moving to South America? Not very high at all. Very, very basic. I had done a bit of Duolingo or Rosetta Stone to get some very, very basic phrases and just ways of, like saying hello to people, but that was it. And I taught myself using my own, let's say, teaching skills, and I kind of reverse engineered the language in my free time and taught myself Spanish. And then, of course, had the opportunity to go out and practice it at any given moment. When you're living and working in a country, and if you are prepared to give it a go, you'll be amazed at how well you are able to progress and how quickly you're able to progress. And as a qualified teacher, you will have obviously an advantage, because there will be certain components of language and language learning, the process behind it, that you will then be able to apply to yourself. Now, I know for many of you at the moment that may not have any teaching experience, that may sound a bit like a magic trick, but the whole point of a TEFL course is that you learn how to teach, in the case of TEFL, English as a foreign language, but really any language to a person that doesn't speak that language. The crucial thing is you're not expected to know any Spanish to successfully teach here in Colombia. People want you to teach them in English. It's a chance for them to have contact time with a real living, breathing, English speaking teacher. So English is the language that you will use, and there's specific techniques and methods that are used to be able to do that, something that you'll be taught in detail during the course. What are the qualifications and experience required? Experience, none. The great thing about the TEFL industry, again, this is talking in general terms, is that the demand for English teachers massively outweighs the supply. That's to say, there's more people around the world, many more, in fact, looking to learn English than there are teachers available to teach them. So schools around the world accept that first-time teachers, um, are good enough to fill that slot. Otherwise, if it was just open to experienced teachers, they would never ever even come close to satisfying the demand. So first-time teachers all around the world find jobs without too much difficulty. And that is very much the case in Colombia, as I said, due to the reputation, due to the fact it's quite a long way away from from a place like the UK or Australia or Ireland. Not that many teachers actually make it over here. So in terms of experience, if there's an opportunity for a teacher from Ireland or from Canada or from the UK to teach in Colombia, people are usually very, very enthusiastic about that. And providing that they are TEFL qualified, experience is something that they're not so worried about. In terms of other qualifications, a university degree is the baseline to go along with that TEFL qualification. It can be a university degree in any subject. That's the case for most formal education institutions. But for other places, some volunteer teaching, also some of the institutes, they don't pay so much attention to that. If you have a passport from a place like the UK, Ireland, US, Canada, or you have a university degree, and that is in conjunction with a TEFL certificate, then you are able to teach here without any difficulties whatsoever. And again, as part of the teaching program, as I said, it's that we have here, we don't just let people sign up. We make sure that we check that you are in the right place to apply at this time. For example, if there's something that we feel is missing that might hold you back during the job finding process, we're not going to put you through all the effort of getting TEFL qualified and having your expectations up here only to go down, because then we turn around and say that, oh, we didn't know this about you. Therefore, no. We filter that out at the beginning. We make sure that anyone that applies and goes through the program is ready to do so. And as for did I have any teaching experience before TEFL in South America? No, absolutely not. As I said right at the start of the webinar, I was working in the music industry. My life was music, events, festivals, studio time, radio shows, all of that kind of thing. Very, very fun lifestyle, but a million miles away from anything to do with education. That was something that I learned to do here after taking a TEFL course in the UK. Fortunately, it's something that just with music, I absolutely fell in love with language teaching and language learning in general. So it's something I clicked into very well. And of course, just the fact that Colombia is such a brain-bogglingly incredible country. All of that combined meant that I stuck around, and as I said, been here for over 8 years now, and recommend it as a place for people to come to at least once in their life to do a bit of teaching and really get kind of just an insight into how things work in this part of the world. Alyssa, does your company offer short-term teaching opportunities, for example, a couple of months? Yes, absolutely. In Colombia, you will find that there are short-term programs that are available. Most of them are volunteer teaching positions. Now, volunteer teaching positions, I know some of you may think like, that's not me. I want to earn some money. I've got bills to pay, festival tickets to buy, whatever it is. Volunteer teaching usually means that your costs are covered. Other than the flights, the schools or the NGOs that operate under these programs do tend to want you to actually be in the country before they take you on, because that's not a cost that they can incur. But once you're there, your housing and your food is typically taken care of, and you don't tend to work that much, usually around 10 to 15 hours a week, maybe a bit more if that's something that you want to do. I have done volunteer teaching in both Colombia and Peru, and I would say that it was an amazing experience. It was very, very useful because it was quite low pressure. It enabled me to get a feel for whether or not I really wanted to do teaching. And it's one of those memories that I have, even though it was right back in 2018. It's still one of my favorite teaching experiences that I've had whilst being in Colombia. So if you're looking to come over here and do something productive for just a few months, you want to teach, you want to make an impact, you want to get to know this country, volunteer teaching is a great way to do it. And one of the amazing things about volunteer teaching is in most cases you do not need a visa, so that part is taken out completely. You enter on a tourist visa, that's to say you turn up with your passport and you get a stamp put in it for 90 days. And that's the time that you here are teaching, because the schools are not paying you, then you're not interacting with the local economy, they are just covering costs and food, which is done kind of separately. So visa, paperwork, translations, and processing time, all of that disappears. So could be a very, very good option for those of you that are looking for something with, a bit shorter commitment, a bit more low pressure. Next question, how flexible as in hours, online, in person? So I guess we're going back to the TEFL course here. The TEFL course itself is very, very flexible. You can, as I say, put in an hour a day, an hour a week. It's totally up to you. There is no pressure from us for you to complete it in a certain time. Some people want to get out immediately, and we have people taking our course that smash through it in 4 to 5 weeks. Some people take a year, some people take something in between. It's totally up to you. We understand that life happens, that people are busy, there's a lot going on. So it's all about just getting that process started and making it work for you in a way that doesn't cause any additional stress. Another question, does this opportunity allow teachers to learn Spanish besides teaching? Absolutely. So even, I taught myself Spanish and I put a lot of effort in my free time to really kind of up my game in that sense. But one of the things you'll find a lot of schools offer as part of the, alongside your teaching salary or as a benefit will be Spanish classes. Same goes for volunteer teaching. Again, particularly with volunteer teaching. In fact, as you're volunteering and they're not paying you, they know that, they need to do something to sweeten the deal. A lot of that comes in the form in terms of like immersion activities, getting out and about, playing football or volleyball with your students. I did a lot of football and CrossFit with my students at the place that I was doing volunteer teaching, and also went to a lot of waterfalls and barbecues. But Spanish teachers and the opportunity, Spanish teaching, sorry, and lessons was also part of the deal as well. Same goes for in Peru, not just in Colombia. So yeah, volunteer teaching is a great way to really immerse yourself in the country if Spanish is the language that you want to know. And Colombians are, I know it's a broad brush stereotype, but it's a positive one. I think that they're lovely and very, very helpful, not as standoffish as in my experience, the UK, when people don't speak English, people are less intuitive and don't really know how to help, probably due to the fact that a lot of people in the UK don't speak another language. But Colombians are, a lot of them are eager to learn English, have learned English at some level, and kind of have a basic understanding and the empathy to go with it, and they help you. So that was a big part of my experience here learning Spanish, just the fact how many Colombians were prepared to kind of jump in and save me or steer me in the right direction and enable me to kind of progress and build up over the years. Next question, do you choose which destination? Do you help with the visas? And does having a disability stop you applying? Three very important questions, two of which I have somewhat answered in terms of choosing the destination. You would tell us the type of place you would like to work in. If, of course, you have seen like a BBC documentary or a Netflix series and you've seen a Colombian city or town, you say, that is for me, then we will aim for that. But if you're not so sure and you're more concerned about finding a place that you would like to be in, but you don't know that much about Colombia, that's where we come in to suggest some destinations. And that's something, of course, we would do. That's a two-way discussion. We won't be obliging you to accept anything until you feel absolutely sure that's the right place for you. Visas, yes, we help with visas, the whole visa processing, which is something that the school has to sponsor because they're your employee, but the actual process itself is something we would manage with the school, and the translations that are needed to carry out that process, we would request certain documents from you, get the translations sorted here in Colombia, sent off to the school, handle that with you. Any feedback or any additional documents that are requested, we would then go back to you. But crucially, you're just doing minimal light lifting when it comes to that. You're not having to deal with the general visa application. Again, the main reason for this is that over here, I always have to do, particularly in the last few years, because I've been running my own private tutor company and I live here full time. I apply for my own visa. I recently and successfully got my residency visa here in Colombia. I filled out all the paperwork. I got all the documents sorted. So it's hoops that I have jumped through many, many times. And again, that's just something that we feel very, very confident that we're able to do to take all of that stress away from you. As for a disability stopping you from applying, I would need to know a bit more about what disability you're talking about there, just because I wouldn't want to give a kind of generic answer. It really depends on what it is and what the requirements associated with that disability would be. Colombians are typically very welcoming and understanding and empathetic, and I think the country is modernizing rapidly in terms of its attitudes. Infrastructure can be a bit of a problem. Again, not wanting to make any assumptions about the disability you're talking about, but for example, in the city I live in, the pavements or the sidewalks, the drop down onto the road, there's not so many ramps. So these are challenges that cities in developing countries, not just Colombia, are constantly having to kind of revisit and develop. But as I said, general attitudes and are modernizing, and I wouldn't see from an employment point of view that being a problem in terms of the day-to-day life, depending on what the needs and requirements are associated with that. Um, then that would impact the experience itself. Oh, I see you've actually had a bit more information there. Epilepsy, autism, and dyslexia, etc. Um, I will be honest, I have not met anyone over here that experiences those disabilities. That's something I would happily look into. And I would need to know a bit more whether you're referring to whether the country is set up to receive people in kind of the day-to-day life, or whether the workplace and attitudes towards people with those type of disabilities. I would recommend CM Summers or Summers CM, that you drop me an email, please. contact@precisiontefl.com. That's something we can talk about offline, and then I can actually look into it a bit more, just so I make sure that I'm asking the right questions and answering the right questions and investigating properly. Next question. What does the TEFL certification include? So the TEFL certificate includes a variety of very, very important things. The bulk of the course, or some of the key topics involved in the course, of course, key teaching skills. The one thing to know about teaching English is that we don't have a template that we apply. We don't just have a one size fits all. We don't just walk into a classroom and know that one thing that works with another group is going to work with another. The way to think about teaching is that you have a toolkit of teaching skills to be able to teach certain components of the language, and then you use your understanding of your students' needs, motivations, preferences, goals, and personalities to know how to integrate those different teaching skills into the classroom. So you may have an assumption from a distance that a TEFL course is just all about teaching skills, but actually that's just one portion of it. One of the key things that we teach you is how to understand your students, how to know the individual or individuals that are in front of you. What do they need from you? Because every class is different. Therefore, every approach has to be different. That ties in very closely to lesson planning, another fundamental part of teaching. But again, lesson planning isn't a box ticking exercise and just filling out forms. Lesson planning is knowing the students you have in front of you. What do they need to get out of it? How are you going to sequence it? And what of the many different teaching techniques that we teach you do you need to implement at that given moment? I know for those of you that are unfamiliar with teaching at the moment, that might sound like a lot, but the course is broken down very logically. It's paced very, very well, and it gives you the ability to work up through everything from contextual understanding all the way through to just day-to-day on-the-spot teaching skills and everything in between. If you're interested in finding out the full details about the course program, if you drop me an email, contact@precisiontefl.com, I'll put it in the chat here. I will happily send you over a brochure, PDF, however you want to refer to it, that has a full breakdown of the learning outcomes and everything that is involved in the course. But the main thing to know, kind of on a macro level, it's we teach you to be a teacher, to know how to competently and confidently go into a classroom, whether that's in Colombia or any other part of the world, and not rely on your students' first language. We use English as the teaching tool. We manage the classroom using English. We plan our lessons. We understand our students, and all of that is taught you in the course. But happy to share that in detail. Contact at precisiontefl.com if you want to find out more information about that. There's some good questions in the chat. By all means, keep them coming. I've got no need to rush off after this. I blocked out my calendar, but I will just enjoy a quick sip of water, just in case anyone wants to put another question in the chat. Very good, very good, very good. Lovely question. So Another question here. What groups of people or institutions would we be teaching if we joined your company? So it's not joining our company, it's joining our program. As I said, we are just helping you get set up in Colombia without the stress. Who you teach and where you work is up to you. As I said, we will ask you and we will be very, very insistent to make sure that we very, comprehensively understand the type of person you want to teach, and that will naturally influence where you're going to work. In Colombia, there's everything from public and private schools, language institutes, uh, NGO projects, small private tutoring companies where you go from house to house teaching people, and lots of other things in between. The type of place you want to work, the type of hours you want to work, the type of student you want to teach, all of that will be taken into account, and we will then direct you, or we will direct ourselves to find jobs on your behalf. The number of hours the number of hours per week that you want to work also comes into this. When I came over to Colombia and I worked, I had spent previously 7 years in the music industry, living and breathing day and night my job. I didn't want to just be tied to the classroom. I did want to teach. I did want to kind of improve in that industry, but crucially, I wanted to explore Colombia and get a feel for the place I was in. So I accepted jobs that took me in a different direction in terms of hours. Started off with 10 hours a week. The following year, I was working 20 hours a week, 25 hours a week. And it was only during one period of my life that I had a really full 35 to 40-hour week job. And that was great because I wanted the money and I wanted the experience. But crucially, it was something I was able to kind of, increase or decrease as I wanted it to. So again, a key part of our program is making sure we know what kind of experience you want. Is this about getting the most amount of teaching hours so you can really feel like you've kind of gone up as a teacher, or just are you using teaching as a way to come over and check out Colombia? There's nothing wrong with the latter if that's the case. A lot of people do it. We're here to help you, with all of those different options. Can I still apply with a TESOL certificate? For our program, we would require you to take our TEFL course. I'm not making any judgments about any other courses, but as part of our program, we need to guarantee certain standards with the teachers that that we put into into the program and obviously put into schools, because we are constantly looking to not only satisfy the demands of teachers that want to come over and enjoy their time in Colombia, but we feel the responsibility of making sure that we put good teachers into those positions to make sure students in Colombia get the very, very best experience. So the only way we can really guarantee that is by ensuring that as part of our program, people do pass through our TEFL course. If you have already taken a TESOL or TEFL course, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it will give you a bit of a refresher and maybe fill in some gaps to ensure that you are fully ready to step into the classroom in Colombia. Question from Vanessa. Do they offer summer roles for uni students without prior teaching experience? Yes, absolutely. In terms of summer roles, if it was just the summer, I think you'd be more likely to look at volunteer teaching positions. But as I said, Vanessa, I have done that in both Colombia and Peru. Two of the best experiences of my life. Two things I wish I could do again now, but as I'm, got a lot of responsibilities with my company and this company, plus being married, unfortunately not something I could do, but I really do cherish the memories of those experiences, and I would absolutely recommend those as things to do. And the great things about teaching roles, as volunteer teaching roles, as I said, is you tend to get a lot of immersion activities provided by the school or the employer. So in terms of like condensing loads of really cool experiences into plenty of teaching and making an impact and helping people learn language, volunteer teaching is really one of the best ways to do it, I would say, if you're looking for something a bit more short term. Question from Zoe. How long does it take to qualify? How much does it cost to be certified? So in terms of how long does it take to qualify, that totally depends on the number of hours you're able to put in each week. Some people finish in 4 weeks, some people finish in 12 months. Again, Zoe, if you give me a rough idea offline, contact@precisiontefl.com in terms of the type of hours you would be able to put in, I would be able to give you an estimate in terms of how long it would take to qualify. And how much does it cost to be certified? The program is broken up into different phases in terms of costs. Number one being the TEFL qualification, number two being the job placement and visa processing, and number three being the in-country support and airport pickup and immersion weekend. All of that we will discuss with you. Again, that's something that we will discuss outside of this space to people that apply and successfully pass through, and that are interested in actually finding out a bit more about the program. The purpose of this session at the moment is not so much to get down in the nitty gritty of costs and stuff like that. It's more just to kind of inspire you into looking at Colombia as an amazing destination. But if you would like to find out a bit more, Zoe, contact at precisiontefl.com. More than happy to share that information with you. Another question here. I'm going on a program, Angloville, in August to Poland. Wonderful. Does TEFL, would I still need to do an accredited course? What happens if you decide that this isn't for you after only a couple of weeks? I can't talk about Angloville and the kind of commitment requirements there. In terms of our program, because it's split up into different phases, there are different moments where you can effectively decide to change course. The first part being the TEFL course. Secondly is the job finding, and then of course getting into Colombia. If during any of those stages you decide you don't want to continue, well, if you stopped at phase 2, you would still then have the TEFL certificate. If you stopped after you found a job and applied for the visa, well, that's something we would encourage you maybe to give a go, as you'd already gone through the process of getting a visa. But that again is totally up to you. If you're in country in Colombia and you realize after some time that it's really not for you, there is effectively nothing stopping you from leaving. It would be a shame, obviously, based on the commitment you've made for the school. The school may ask you to cover the cost of the visa, as they will typically do that themselves. But yeah, this isn't something where people are going to be taking your passport on arrival and locking it in a box until you complete your contract. It's something that would be a shame if you didn't do it. Again, if you feel that that's potentially something that you may encounter, you may go through, then I would suggest volunteer teaching, low pressure, much lower commitment. There's no visa involved, so you're not costing the school money in terms of admin and applications. So a kind of softer entry if you feel that, you really want to kind of dip your toe in and find out if it's for you before committing to something a bit more long term. Again, more than happy to bounce ideas and share ideas offline. Contact at precisiontefl.com. What are average salaries for teachers? What currency are you paid in? So you'd be paid in Colombian pesos, which are quite interesting because compared to the pound, it's 5,000 pesos to the pound. So you get paid in millions of pesos. So I actually should have said this right at the beginning of the webinar. Come to Colombia, you will be a millionaire in pesos. But it's true. You get paid in millions of pesos. And salaries range. Salaries can be anything from 500 to £1,000 a month. Now, usually I would say they're around the £600 to £700 a month, but depending on where you work, maybe higher, maybe slightly lower. Now, don't let that put you off. I know £700 in the context of the UK or Ireland or Canada is not a lot of money, but over here in Colombia, that goes a very, very long way. As I said, my wife and I were living in a 3-bedroom apartment, massive place with a balcony and a park view, £200 a month rent. There's obviously far cheaper places out there that you could be living in. We had 2 salaries, 2 people living here full time. So that's why we justified that. If you were living over here and working as a teacher, you'd be looking at rent that would be considerably lower than that, and your salary would go a long way. When I was working in institutes a few years ago here in Colombia, I was never short of money. As I said, the beauty of Colombia is that because it grows all of its own food, there's no kind of crazy markups on a lot of products. In the UK, you basically have to sell a limb to get a decent avocado. Not here. Actually, on the way walking back to my apartment today, I bought one from a street seller and it cost me next to nothing. Beautiful, ripe avocado that's been picked probably during the last 24 hours. So that is the kind of thing that is out here when it comes to the cost of living versus what you are paid. Next question. What if we don't know who we want to teach or where? Okay, don't worry about having that at the front of your mind at the moment. There, as part of the application process and the general onboarding process before you commit to anything financially, that's the kind of thing we would get out of you. That makes it sound like you're going to go through some kind of really horrible interrogation process. Don't worry, it's nothing like that. But we will ask you all the necessary questions so we have a clear picture in our minds if it's right for you to join our program. So don't worry. You're just going to be answering questions honestly about your preferences, and we will help determine that for you. Thank you very much for your questions. I will continue to go. Once receiving the TEFL certificate, if you are unable to go abroad right away, are you able to come back to the job board and still get the assistance mentioned with this company? Yes, absolutely. That is why we do things that they're in the phases for this program, rather than paying a lump sum up front, which might mean then, if something comes up, you have a change of change of heart, or just whatever, life gets in the way, you haven't then spent money on something that you potentially may not take advantage of. That's why it's split up in phases. First, you pay for the TEFL qualification. Once you have graduated, we then ask you, are you ready? Do you want us to start looking for a job? Are you ready to get, in the mood to come over to Colombia? If it's yes, then there would be a second payment point to start that process. If not, effectively, it's on hold up until there. Again, we're very, very flexible. We want to make sure that people that come over for this program are in the right headspace and it's the right time for them, which is why we are not kind of trying to force your hand by locking you in with some full program fee right at the beginning. We're much friendlier than that. If we don't pass the job interview, what happens then? Do you offer help of how we can improve? Yes, absolutely. In terms of passing the job interview, without wanting to make it sound like it's a done deal, most employers in Colombia, because there's not so many foreign teachers that want to come over, if they get the opportunity to hire someone and the CV matches, I would say it's a fairly solid chance of passing the job interview. If you don't, then we would get together with you and discuss how it went. Probably get some feedback as well from the employer. In fact, that's absolutely something that we would do. Unfortunately, Colombians are very open typically. So we'd be able to get that information. Based on that feedback, we'd then give you some pointers, help you towards any other job interviews. But the advantage, and this is the thing, that it's so difficult for people to understand who are currently outside of this industry. So I totally get it. But because the demand here is so much bigger than the supply, this isn't the most competitive industry when it comes to getting a job. You're not facing 25 other candidates all sat outside in the corridor like we see in the movies. No, this may be the first application that they've had from a foreign teacher ever, or in the last year or 6 months. So in that sense, I would say that job interviews are more getting to know you sessions rather than the type of make or break selection processes that maybe you've experienced in other parts of the world. Again, totally depends on the school and what's going on, but I would say here, thanks to the enormous demand for teachers, that is one thing that is made a little bit easier. Following on a question here, do you still stay part of the company after you get your first placement? For example, if you'd like to move somewhere else after a while, can we come back to you for assistance in job search and help finding placements? That's an interesting one. I guess that's something really from our point of view. It depends on how you're set up. If you said to me, Tom, I want to spend 12 months in Colombia and I want to move around, then I would say the likelihood is you're going to have to line up a number of different volunteer spots. Remember, volunteer means they cover your costs. So you would need maybe some savings just to make sure that you've got some extra cash, but your day-to-day living costs will be covered. That way, if you really were eager on saying like, Tom, I want to spend the first 3 months on the Caribbean coast, then I want to go to the coffee region, then I want to finish off my teaching down in the Amazon jungle. We can make that happen, but because of the way visas work, they are unlikely to be paid full-time job, because that would mean visa, 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 and that means new visa costs, new translations, the whole process repeated, repeated, repeated. And also, if you were to try and apply for, I think, 3 visas in your first 12 months in Colombia, at least on the third, the foreign ministry here would probably start to raise a few eyebrows in terms of what's really going on. So if you wanted a full year program or a 6 month or whatever, however many months, and you wanted to move around, volunteer teacher would be the one. If after your first 12 months of working for a school full-time paid and you wanted to go through something else, but you wanted support, yes, we would absolutely give you that support. But yes, chopping and changing within the space of a year or even less than a year would, as I said, that would be volunteer teaching. Do you need to hold the nationality of an English-speaking country to qualify to teach? So it depends. There are going to be some places that will prefer applications from Brits, Americans, Canadians, people from Ireland, people from Australia, people from New Zealand, South Africa. Apologies if I'm missing any English-speaking countries out there. I think I got all of them there. There are some places that will just kind of demand that. But I have worked with a number of different teachers during my time in Colombia that are from France, from Poland, from Germany, from the Netherlands. Um, and that's because even though they're not from English speaking countries, they are from European countries. And how I'm trying to think of the best way to put this in Colombia, because Colombia is of its history and the fact it's in Latin America or South America, to be more precise. And this is a continent which is not as well developed, has been somewhat abandoned, somewhat badly treated in its history. They aspire towards the living standards and the cultural standards and the infrastructure and generally what is seen on the TV of life in places like North America and Europe. So if you're from a European country and it's not the UK, that doesn't rule it out entirely, because again, they're quite excited about receiving foreign teachers, because providing that your English level is good, you're university educated, and you have a clean criminal background, that really is the other kind of main requirements. Um, yes, I've met a number of European teachers from during my time in Colombia, and all of them have slotted in very, very well and had really, really good time. So depending on where you're from, that's something again we can analyze closely. That will be part of the application process for the program. Again, something we can discuss in detail offline. Contact at precisiontefl.com if you want to do that. Let's go down. We've got a few more. Oh, we've got one more question from Peter, whom Peter, I believe you attended our webinar last week. So thank you again for coming. We need to get you like a membership card that we stamp, which we build up to it. We get you some kind of benefit. Is this program suitable for native speakers? As I said, so that's good. Tick that one off there. Available for native speakers and non-native speakers, depending on the country that you're from. Again, we can discuss that offline. It seems that there are many companies and schools who favor English native speakers. That is the case. There is, I won't know, there is going to be a top line preference. If a school had the choice between someone from the UK and someone from Poland, nothing to do negative towards Poland, they would probably pick the UK because the UK is an English speaking country. But as I said, there is such a huge demand here in Colombia for qualified English teachers in general. And a lot of these places probably have never received an application from a foreign teacher before. Someone from Europe or another non-English speaking country outside of South America will at least be received and taken seriously. So it doesn't rule it out at all. As I said, I've worked with people from lots of different European countries during my time in Colombia, and all of them have had a great time and treated exactly the same as me, paid the same as me, worked the same number of hours as me. How does TEFL in Colombia be similar or different from other Latin American countries? And are other Latin American countries also good for TEFL? So I've only ever worked in Peru. I would say that Peruvians were slightly more reserved when compared to Colombians. Colombians are famous, I think, for being very, very outgoing. And again, I'm not getting stuck in that friendly locals trope that you find in Lonely Planet. I think one of the really Colombia was voted one of the happiest countries on the planet a few years ago. Anyone that comes here, it's kind of infectious, the kind of warmth and the smiles and the interactions of the people that just talk to you as you're going up in the lift or in the back of a taxi or waiting in line at the supermarket. People just talk to each other, not just to foreigners, but to each other. And I think for foreigners that come from countries like the UK, where talking in the line at the supermarket, unless you're complaining, it's probably never going to happen. So that's why it's very, very good place to work. But yeah, there's lots of places all over Latin America that are popular for TEFL. Costa Rica, Guatemala, Mexico, Ecuador, and that includes the Galapagos Islands, Peru, Bolivia, all over the place, Brazil, Argentina. It's amazing, amazing continent. I've been to a lot of countries in Latin America, but despite the fact that I've been to, I think, about 10 South/Latin American countries, Colombia remains number one by a mile. Is Colombia suitable for introverts? I would say so. It depends on your level of, how introverted you are, if that's the right way of saying it. If you really don't want people talking to you at any point unless you talk to them, Colombia may not be for you because it's very, very social and outgoing people. But in Colombia, there's all sorts of people. There are introverts here in Colombia. There are very, very outgoing people, quiet people, loud people, friendly people, not so friendly people, people that invite you into their home on the first time meeting you, people that don't and like to keep you at a distance. There's every type of person in this country, just like every other country. So I think you would find the type of person that's right for you. In my case, even though I'm very, very outgoing and I worked in the music industry, which was, a social life up to 10. Now, in my slightly older age of 36, would you believe it? I actually do prefer to kind of spend a bit more time on my own and just with my wife and kind of chill out. And I've made friends and kind of group of friends over here that are of a similar type of person. When I first arrived here and it was all about meeting people and going out, I also found those people as well. So depending on what stage of life you're in or depending on your personality, there are people for you uh, out there as well. I only need a digital nomad visa if I do not teach online from my home country. So digital nomad visas, not something we're really discussing in the context of Colombia. Colombia does have a digital nomad visa, but in the case of our program, that's not something that we would be looking at. Peter, if you're really eager to talk about digital nomad visas in the context of Colombia, do drop me an email and we can talk about that. But in the context of this webinar, I think I'll leave that one if you don't mind. Sorry, I'm still confused about the part of interacting with the local economy. Okay, that is something we will talk about offline. But yeah, more than happy to do so. I think we are there in terms of the questions, unless anyone wants to get one in. Oh, someone does have their hand up and someone is typing. Depending on how quickly they can type, we will get into this. Whilst this person is typing, I will just quickly say, again, thank you very much for your time and listening today. I know this has gone on quite a long time. I love these Q&As. It's the opportunity to help people get kind of clarity. That clarity doesn't stop here. If you want to just find out more information about what we offer in terms of TEFL courses in general, then that's something you could do. If you want to find out more about teaching in Colombia or our teaching in Colombia program, all of that to the same email address, contact@precisiontefl.com. I make time in my day to answer these questions. You are not going to receive AI agents or bots or ChatGPT or any kind of template responses. You will speak with me and I will take the time to make sure I answer your specific questions. So please do not feel any resistance when it comes to speaking with us. When it comes to this TEFL in Colombia program and our TEFL training in general, we put a lot of love and energy into it. It's very personalized, very hands-on. You are not just given login details and sent off to get on with it. We really want to help you. We really want to be part of that experience, and we really want to develop a relationship with you in terms of helping you get from A to B in terms of your TEFL and teaching goals and dreams. So please do count on us for that very, very direct support. One more question. Let's wrap this one up. Does it have to be full time? Would you have available for the summer only paid placements and what's required? I would say in terms of if it's only for the summer, you're unlikely to get a paid placement just because with the visa costs, with all the costs that are involved in that admin from a school, they're going to want you to be there a bit longer than just summer. But do not discount volunteer teaching. I have a particularly strong connection with a school in the state just above the Amazon jungle. That's where I went to work. Lovely people. It was honestly, I'm in love with that place, in love with that school, and that's where we would be able to slot people in terms of the program for teaching for a short time, very, very easily. So don't discount volunteer teaching. It's a great way to get all the very best out of the experience from immersive activities, getting to know students, getting to teach, covering costs. You're in Colombia, how much better can it get? So I would absolutely encourage all of you to think about that. And as I said, one of the great things there is that visas are taken out of the equation, which means in terms of the overall program cost, a massive chunk of it is taken out straight away because we wouldn't need to, from our company side of things, put in that time and energy and the paperwork and the translation. So a big part of the overall program cost would disappear. So again, I don't want to go into sales mode here because that's not the purpose of this. This is meant to inspire you rather than sell to you. But if you are interested in finding more about all of that, as I've said, contact@precisiontefl.com. I would also encourage all of you to follow us on Instagram, funnily enough, Instagram Precision TEFL. We have a policy of not spending loads of money on digital marketing, so our number of followers is fairly modest. We don't pump money into the Facebook meta black hole. Um, we prefer to go one-to-one with things like webinars and stuff like that. But please do follow us. Content does go up regularly. And we will actually have a number of other webinars taking place recently. We have another one on the 29th of April, which is about TEFL in general. So if you're interested in finding out more about us and more about what's out there in terms of the TEFL world in general, that may be something that you want to attend on the 29th of April. You'll find that on our website, precisiontefl.com. Peter, who has contributed via questions to chat, has been to one of those webinars, so I'm hoping he will give that a 5-star review in the chat as well. But anyway, that I think is enough from me for now. Thank you very much to all of you for your time. Thank you for the positivity I'm reading here in the chat. Please do keep in touch. Please do drop us a message. Please do follow us on social media. And please do come along to our next webinar, the 29th of April, precisiontefl.com to sign up for that. Contact at precisiontefl.com to speak with me. Thank you very much, everyone. I am going to end this call in a matter of seconds. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a nice evening. I see someone saying that they've got a few questions there as they joined late. So let me just put my email one more time in the chat, just so that you've all got it. So I honestly would love to hear from you. Thank you very much, everyone. Most of you are in the UK, so have a lovely evening. To those of you in Canada and North America, have a nice afternoon. It's time for me to get some lunch. Hope to hear from some of you soon. Hope to see some of you on the program. Hope to pick up some of you from the airport here in Colombia in a few months' time. Let's make it happen. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.